Law. We here at Afford Law practice criminal and family law in Massachusetts, and we charge our fees on a sliding scale. That means that the less you make, the less we charge for our services. Today, on the criminal side, we're going to be discussing field sobriety tests. Field sobriety tests are critical in any operating under the influence charge you might be facing, or OUI, drunk driving, in other words. So the field sobriety tests are a series of tests that are given by the police officer at the roadside, sometimes back at the station if certain events dictate that, so inclement weather or something along those lines. But typically, they are taken in the field, hence the name field sobriety test, as you may imagine. There are a number of tests that can be given for an officer to try to determine if you are intoxicated, either by liquor or drugs or anything else. So sometimes you'll see an officer has asked somebody to recite the alphabet, count backwards for a period of time. But really, when we're talking about field sobriety tests, there are three main tests that are given. They're called, there are three tests, and those are the standard field sobriety tests. So that's a battery of tests that are given. They are coordination tests and split attention tests. They're called split attention tests because you need to be thinking about one thing and doing another thing at the same time. So multitasking, in other words. So there are three of them. The first one is called the horizontal gaze nystagmus test. I know that's a mouthful. It's called HGN for short. The horizontal gaze nystagmus, or HGN, is that test that is given by a police officer to someone who they suspect is driving under the influence. That test is performed by holding an object, either it's usually the officer's finger or perhaps a pen, something along those lines. They will hold it in front of the person that they think is intoxicated, and they will give them instructions that they are to follow the pen movement with their eyes and their eyes only, not to move their head. So the officer will hold it up here, something like this, and will move it all the way to one side, come back, move it all the way to the other side, and your eyes are supposed to track where it goes, again, without moving your head. There are a number of things that the officer is looking for to see if he or she can determine if you are intoxicated. One is nystagmus. Nystagmus is basically a sort of a choppy motion as your eyes move. When you're under normal circumstances, and if you don't have any medical conditions that could contribute to a nystagmus, your eye pursuit, that is the movement in your eye, should be smooth. So it should go from left to right in a sort of a sweeping motion as the object is passed before your face. When you're intoxicated, what happens is there's a jerky type movement as your eyes are following that object. So the officer is looking to see if it's that type of motion in your eyeballs as you're following. They're also looking to see if there is distinct nystagmus. That's that jerky type motion prior to going all the way to one side. So everybody has some nystagmus, and certainly when you get to the outer limits of your vision, nystagmus is common. But the officer is looking to see if there is significant nystagmus prior to getting to that position. So there are basically three clues or cues that the officer looks for, one for each eye, so there are 6 possibles. So that's the horizontal gaze nystagmus test, HGN. The second test that's given is what they call the 9-step walk and turn. So this is brilliantly named because you have to take 9 steps, walk and turn, and come back to 9 steps. So what you have to do is you have to place one foot in front of the other, and you have to step heel to toe 9 times, counting out loud. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 as you're walking. When you reach the 9th step, you must take a turn, and the officer will give you instructions on how to make that turn in basically short little movements with your feet to turn around and come back 9 steps, counting out loud, heel to toe, as the officer has instructed you. The officer is looking to see if you are falling off the line, if your heel and toe are not touching, if you're using your arms for balance, if you're falling off the line, if you fall down, that's happened. And if you make an incorrect turn, and then again, the 9 steps on the way back must be heel to toe on the line without using your arms for assisting you in your balance. So that's what the officer is looking for in that case. And the third of the standard field sobriety tests is the one leg raise. Basically, that's when you're standing on 2 feet, and then you raise one leg. It's up, your choice, right or left. Lift it up. You look down at your foot. You raise it about 6 inches above the ground, and you look down and you wait for the officer to tell you you can put your foot back down. Typically, it's about 30 seconds or so. That's what they're looking for, is to be able to hold it up for 30 seconds. While you're holding it up, the officer's, again, looking to see if you're using your arms for balance, if you're swaying from side to side, if you're just unable to do it, or if you put your foot down prior to the 30 seconds. Now, something interesting that we recently found out is that even people who are intoxicated can oftentimes get to about the count of 25, so 25 seconds or so with their foot in the air without putting it down. But to get to that 30 limit, to that 30-second time, it's very difficult if someone is intoxicated. So they put these all together. They take observations of you doing this, and they use that as a basis to decide yes or no they believe that you are intoxicated. Beyond the tests themselves, there are the officers looking for many things as he or she has encountered you, and they're making lots of observations aside from strictly the tests themselves. So when they approach the car, they're going to engage you in conversation. They're going to be asking you where you're coming from, where you're going to, make sure you know where you are. They're going to ask you if you've had anything to drink. They're trying to smell if there's any smell of alcohol on your breath. They're making observations when they ask you for your license and registration. They're looking to see if you can get your wallet out, if you have the manual dexterity, so if you have the coordination with your fingers, the fine motor skills first to find your license and then to take it out of the wallet. Sometimes people can't find their wallets. Sometimes people fumble through the wallet looking for their license. They can't seem to find the license. They'll hand the officer a credit card or a library card instead of the license. They can't get the registration out of the glove compartment or something like that. So obviously the officer is looking for that kind of cue as well to tell them that you are intoxicated. They ask you to get out of the car. They want to see if you have your good balance, if you're falling over when you're getting out of the car, if you need to hold on to the car for balance. They ask you to step typically to the back of the car so they can conduct these tests and also to interview you. They're looking to see if you're holding on to the car for balance and so forth. They'll also always, or they should always, ask you if you have any medical conditions, anything with your joints, any recent surgeries, back injuries, knee injuries in particular, any head injuries. The reason for that is if you have certain medical conditions, diabetes is another one, it could give a false positive test to the officer that you are intoxicated. So, for instance, if you've had surgery on your back, you may well not be able to perform the field sobriety tests as you normally would, because of that medical condition. So if you do have a medical condition, you should certainly tell the officer. But let me just backtrack to say, before any of this, keep in mind that you do not have to take the field sobriety tests. The officers won't tell you that, and they don't have to be fair. You don't have to take the field sobriety test. You don't have to speak to the officers. If you've been pulled over for, let's say, a traffic violation, speeding or a taillight out or something along those lines, you must produce your license, your registration, and your proof of insurance. And if the officer wants you to get out of the car, you pretty much have to get out of the car, because everyone's concerned with officer safety, as they should be, as we should be. But you don't have to speak to the officers. You don't have to engage in conversation. You don't have to answer their question about where you're coming from and where you're going to. You don't have to answer their questions whether you've been had anything to drink that night, or anything of the sort. The less you say, typically, the better off you are. A lot of people think that they can talk their way out of it. You probably can't. When you're interacting with the officer, they're looking to see if you're intoxicated, and they're looking to build a case to prove, ultimately to prove that you are intoxicated and therefore breaking the law. So keep in mind that you do not have to take the field sobriety tests. That refusal to take the test or even to speak with the officers is not admissible at time of trial. So you're preserving your rights, and you should definitely keep that in mind when you're encountering the police officers at the side of the road. So those are the field sobriety tests. One other interesting fact about this is, so there's lots of studies that have gone into analyzing whether the field sobriety tests are accurate or not in predicting whether somebody is intoxicated. And each test carries a certain percentage of likelihood that the person is intoxicated. And using all three of them together, combined together, the theory is anyway that a trained officer has a very high probability of determining whether or not you are intoxicated. Here's an interesting thing about the HGN, horizontal gaze nystagmus test. Without an expert that's brought in at the time of trial, the HGN is not admissible. I'm not exactly sure why the HGN is still being given on a regular basis, but it is, because I've never seen it come in. I've never seen an expert called at the time of trial. I suppose if it was an extremely serious case, if somebody unfortunately lost their life or was badly injured or something along those lines, they could bring in an expert to discuss and explain the HGN and the physiology of it and so forth. But typically, that's not admissible. Also, oftentimes police will give you a portable breath test at the scene, so it's just a small device that you breathe into. That's also not admissible at time of trial. So if you take that breath test and you have a reading that's over 0.08, which is the limit in Massachusetts, that's not admissible at trial either. So keep that in mind. Stay safe. Certainly don't drink and drive. That's a whole different issue. You should just not be doing it for safety reasons, obviously. But if you do encounter a police officer and get pulled over, just remember that you don't have to take the tests, and you can expect these tests to be given if you give your permission to do so. That's our tip of the day here from Afford Law. At Afford Law, we are a number of attorneys working together. We're dedicated to providing legal help for folks who are facing family law, so that's divorce, child custody, child support, and so forth, and criminal law matters in Massachusetts. Here's the problem with the legal system as we see it for a lot of people. The people who the individuals who make very little money qualify for a court-appointed attorney or perhaps legal aid, and the folks who make a good deal of money can go out and hire an attorney at the going rate in the open market. Our focus is the folks who are working but not making a great deal of money and are now faced with this expense and this trauma of going through either a family law or a criminal law matter in Massachusetts. So we base our fees on a sliding scale. So we take the income and the number of people in the household of our clients, and we put that into a calculator, and it's on a sliding scale. So if you make more money, you'll be charged a little bit more. If you make less money, you'll be charged a little bit less, or significantly less, actually. So keep that in mind. If you have any questions or if you have any concerns, please feel free to give us a call. Visit us at affordlaw.org. We have a lot of information on the website that could be helpful to you. Please feel free to book an appointment with us. We'd be happy to speak to you. At Afford Law, we're making justice affordable. Thank you.